Hey, this is Warren Redlick. I'm here with Cern Basher. I'm, of course, wearing the Tesla's the next Tesla t-shirt you can buy at elonbits.com. I think Cern agrees with me that Tesla is the next Tesla. It is the stock that will go up. It's much more likely to go up, much more than any other stock, just like it did in 2020. We see that happening again. We're going to talk about TeslaBot. We have pretty similar views on TeslaBot and the economic model that we think drives Tesla stock much higher and generates value for humanity as well. But CERN's model is, I'm just going to say better. It's more detailed. I think mine is simpler, but I think his is better. So I'm going to ask CERN to lay it out. And just, he's a rising star in the Tesla investor community and the social media community surrounding Tesla. And I'm really happy to have him here. Thank you for coming on, CERN. And whenever you feel you need to, please share a screen. Would you please tell the audience, maybe sort of initially, what's your high level, this is why Tesla is going to be successful with bot, and this is how valuable it is?
Yes. Well, first of all, good morning, Warren, and good evening where you are. Thanks for having me on. It's good to be with you. Yeah, high level in terms of why Tesla will be successful with bot. Tesla has the engineering know-how, they have the AI talent, they have the engineering talent, they have the ability to manufacture things at scale. And so Tesla is certainly well positioned in all those areas to bring a very capable humanoid robot to the world.
I agree with that. Like I said,
So
we agree on a lot, but go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, I think one of the things that we wanted to explore today was this idea of whether or not we should, whether Tesla should, sell the humanoid robot, or whether or not it should be a robot as a service. I think we share some similar views on this, but maybe we can explore some of the areas that were different. And so what I'd like to do is just take you through some slides just to kind of set the stage for this. So first of all, I mean, there are clearly some pros and cons to either model. And if we just kind of hit the highlights here, if Tesla sells Optimus robots, it's very straightforward. You buy it at a certain price. The price might be set based on the robot's capabilities at that time. Initially, perhaps the robot isn't all that capable, but over time, the robot becomes more capable and Tesla could sell it for more. It also results, as we'll see, in a faster revenue and profit ramp. And then there's also the opportunity for future upgrade revenue. So that's a nice option for Tesla. It's not like they just sell the bot and they're done. There's opportunity for additional revenue later. For the customer, you get to own a bot, and that's pretty cool. I think a lot of us would be excited about owning a robot. There might be some tax benefits in terms of depreciation for companies that buy bots, so that would help. And then you could resell the bot. Potentially, the bot could appreciate in price over time as it becomes more capable with software updates. So that's an interesting feature. Most of the time when we buy things, we think they depreciate. The bot actually may not for a period of time if it becomes more capable. On the con side of the equation, for Tesla, they might miss out on a lot of recurring income, and we'll explore that in a minute in my models. It might be more difficult for them to get the pricing right if they, sell it for one price up front. If it's a recurring model, they can adjust the pricing as needed. It also results in a more volatile revenue and earning stream, and I'll show that in a second in the models. But that's a consideration too. Investors prefer business models that are more stable and steady. Think of Apple's the App Store services model. It results in very consistent revenue for them. For the bot customer, a con is it's a large upfront cost that they might need to finance, right? And so that might limit the customer base. People may not be able to afford or willing to finance these bots. And also, if you buy a bot, you run the risk of, next year the bot is that much more capable, and now you're stuck with a bot that's not really that useful. It walks too slow. It can't do certain tasks because it's just not built right. So that's potentially a risk.
You've got me thinking of the Star Wars, the first Star Wars movie, where the job, the whatever the little critters are, they like got the bots, then they like, steal the bots and then they like sell them as like used bots, and they're like crappy. And that's like the future of a bot.
Right. One of the first jobs of a new bot might be to recycle the old one. And then on the robot as a service side of the coin, for Tesla, It results in a very stable, ongoing revenue stream. It's a steadier revenue and profit ramp, and I'll show that graphically in a minute. And it's just easier for them to adjust the pricing on it, based on how the bot potentially is being used at that time. So it could change monthly depending on how the customer is using the bot, or daily potentially. For the bot customer, it's great. It's an easier access. There's no need to get bank financing. You're just paying a subscription fee. The cost of the bot is perhaps more well matched to your monthly expenses and cash flow. So that's nice. It might be easier for you to scale up or down usage. Maybe today you need 10 bots and next month you need 20. And so it's just easier to go up and down as your business needs change. And you have the reduced risk of the bot, not being useful at some point. On the con side, for Tesla, it's more complexity in billing and tracking and everything. It may be more complexity than just selling the bot. They have to take the replacement risk and they might be responsible for maintenance. So if you have customers that are abusing the bots, then that cost may fall on Tesla. It might be more expensive for them than if the customer owned the bot and was responsible for their own maintenance costs. So that's a consideration. And then finally, the con for the customer results in endless ongoing costs. If you own the bot, you might have one lump sum payment and you're done, but this would be a monthly ongoing fee for the life of the bot. You never own the bot, you could never sell it for a profit. It's always Tesla's property. And it might be subject to more limitations than if you owned it yourself. As I've mentioned before, bots, Tesla's going to want to control how bots are going to be used, not just, for military purposes, but just in general. They don't really want people out there abusing the bots for fun and making YouTube videos of bots, being thrown off bridges or whatever, or even bots fighting with each other, perhaps.
Robbing banks.
So those kinds of issues. Ultimately, where it comes down for me in this pro and con list is, are we going to account for the bots as machines or humans? A human laborer, we don't buy up front. We don't buy labor when you start a business. You don't buy the person. You pay them a monthly income or hourly wage. You treat them as humans. You pay them for the labor. So same thing with bots. Potentially, are we going to treat the bots more as humans? And that also relates to the whole tax issue as well that we'll discuss in a bit. So Warren, your thoughts on this?
Well, the one thing, when people say, oh, it's expensive and people won't be able to afford to buy it, Tesla is selling semi for, I don't know, $200,000. It probably might end up selling Tesla semi for $300,000. If you think the primary customer is individuals in their home, yeah, I can see the point. If you think the primary customer is businesses, businesses are used to investing in equipment and they can get financing to invest in equipment if that's what they need. If they can show the bank, hey, this is the value generation, they shouldn't have a problem getting financing. Tesla may be able to make money. Somebody I was talking to recently was talking about was this you? I think you had this concept of Tesla making money selling basically on credit. I don't know if that was you. I think that was someone else had this model of like Tesla having a huge share of its revenue and profits in the future from providing credit to customers. And I don't want to rule that out. I just, I think I don't think there's going to be a challenge for, like my fantasy is bot sells for $100,000. Some people think I'm crazy putting the price that high. Oh, I would, and the classic response is, well, I wouldn't buy one if it was that expensive. I'm like, well, it's not about you. It's about a business that's going to save $800,000 over the life of the bot. Of course, they'd pay $100,000 for something that's going to save them $800,000 over 10 years. So I think we tend to look at these things that way. What are your thoughts on this distinction? Sorry, this distinction of bots versus robots as a selling versus robots as a service when it comes to home consumers, or who is the primary customer for bot?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. I think initially the primary customer for the bot is in a factory, in a warehouse where it is highly controlled. There's a lot less risk in highly controlled environments than there would be in a home environment. In the home environment, you've got kids, you've got pets, you've got stairs, you've got all kinds of crazy stuff that can go on. And so initially, I think it's with businesses and factories and warehouses. And as the bot becomes more capable over time, then I think you start to see it rolled out into the home. And perhaps that's when the robots as a service model really kicks in, because the reality is a business can afford to finance a whole bunch of bots. That's not a problem for a business. But for individual consumer, that's a bigger consideration.
Yeah, well, they don't have the revenue stream to justify the bot to be able to show the bank this is what value that he's going to generate for me, and this is how I'm going to make more money and be able to pay this loan back. Where the business can show the business case for the bot. I do. I think I'm out on a limb here. I think I'm sort of on my own in saying I think there's a huge advantage to having bots in the home. Not from a I mean, to one, as a consumer, I want one, and I'm willing to take the risks that go along with having this bot, just like I'm willing to take the risks of having a teenage boy, right? If you have a teenage boy, they're kind of risky. They're not always
Right.
great on stairs. They do stupid things. They injure things. Um, but I think the value. This is one of the disagreements I had with Larry Goldberg. I just interviewed Larry Goldberg. That interview is going to appear the day before this interview, and maybe I'll post a link here to see that video. But um, I think that Tesla needs to get a lot of bots out in the world in a lot of different contexts to generate more data to train bot to understand the real world better. And I don't think limiting bot to being inside factories and warehouses is going to generate the kind of data that's necessary for bot to learn the real world. Does that make sense? I don't know how much you're into the AI side of it versus the financial side of it. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think there is this question of, how do bots learn? It also relates to, by the way, whether or not there's a bot app store for skills at some point. So, um, my view is that once, the method for training a bot is you train a bot that learns a skill, and then the whole fleet of bots can be updated with the new model, and all the bots then know how to do that skill. So as it relates to, could there be a bot skill store? I think that's unlikely because once a bot learns a skill, it can then generalize to other skills, and it's not something that you can necessarily control and say, okay, this bot can only cut, these things and it can't cut these things because it's a slightly different method. I think once a bot learns to, use knives in a kitchen, for example, then it will be very capable of slicing and dicing all kinds of stuff. So, part of it relates to how the bots are trained. It appears to be with AI that data, massive amounts of data are required for bots to learn. And having I think you mentioned this, a bot, beta program might be an interesting idea for Tesla if they really want to accelerate the learning of the bots in multiple domains.
Yeah, the nags are going to suck though.
Right. Sure. Yeah,
The
it might be a
bot,
little
the
different.
bot will be watching you and say, "Hey, pay attention."
Right. Yeah, at least the bot's not going down the road at 85 miles an hour. So the risks are a little different, but yes,
It's not a 3,500 or 4,000 pound or 5,000 pound monster going 90 miles an hour. It's a 125-pound thing going 5 miles an hour
that's
at
right.
top speed. So the kinetic energy in a bot is much less than the kinetic energy in a car.
The risks are very different, and that's one of the reasons that we may see bots in the wild before autonomy becomes a real business for anybody,
Okay.
because of the risks are much lower and regulations are not the same.
Okay. So what's next?
Um, so let's explore then the potential savings by using Optimus in, let's say, a manufacturing environment. And I'm sorry for all the numbers here, but I wanted to explore at different wage rates. I'm not sure if you can see the mouse on the screen. At different labor rates, I'm assuming people, working 40 hours a week. So if
Let me
it's
just slow you
$10
down for a
an hour,
second. Let me just slow you down for a second. So the blue row at the top, where you can see
yes,
Optimus and 2160, to the right of the 2160 are different hourly wage rates for human labor starting at $10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 40, 50. And that's the first column is $10 and it goes up to $50. The Optimus box says 2160. So just so people can see that, and underneath that you have 40 hours worked per week on the first set.
yes, thank you. And we'll come back to the Optimus column in a minute, but let's just focus on the human labor side. From $10 to $50 an hour, that results in an annual wage of 20,000 to 100,000. So I'm looking at a fairly broad range of wages. But for an employer, that's not the only cost. They have Social Security and Medicare taxes. They have unemployment insurance taxes to pay. Um, and so on. And of course, the employee has payroll taxes and their share of the FICA taxes. So there's different levels of taxes to consider, but I'm just looking at the employer's costs. Also, if you look on line 5, other benefits and overhead, I'm assuming an extra 25% of somebody's pay for benefits, whether they be retirement benefits or life insurance or anything else. So at $10 an hour, effectively, it's more like $13.50 an hour for the employer. And at $50 an hour, it's effectively more like $66, $67 an hour for the employer. Now, going back to the Optimus column, if Tesla charges $3,600 a month for Optimus, that's a cost of $43,200 a year. At 40 hours a week, that would be $2,160 an hour for Optimus. Okay. If we follow that down, Optimus total cost, I'm including some cost of insurance and some other things in there as well, would maybe be $24 an hour. Now, in the 40 hours per work week scenario, Optimus starts to save money if people are making $25 an hour or more. It saves about $10 or more an hour when you get to human labor at those rates. Okay, if human labor is $10 or $15, Optimus is not saving any money if it's only working 40 hours a week.
Can I take a step back here? How
Yes.
did you get the $21.60 an hour hourly wage for Optimus that you started
In my
with?
original model for Optimus, I assumed that Tesla would charge $3,600 a month, and that's the 43,200 a year. And then backing into what's the cost per hour if it's 40 hours a week. Now let's look at the next one where it's 80 hours a week. And you can start to see the advantages of Optimus begin to shine through. It's all the same numbers, but the only thing that changed is the 80 in the yellow box. Okay, so if Optimus is able to work 2 shifts, let's say, instead of 1, so effectively it's working 80 hours a week, then the advantages over the human labor start to be magnified. And you're looking at, a benefit across the wage scale, anywhere from $1.33 an hour all the way up to 54 an hour. And then if Optimus is able to work 3 shifts, 120 hours in the yellow box, the wage savings per hour effectively become even larger. So this is just sort of showing on one level what the potential wage savings could be
So sorry,
for robot.
the wage savings are the yellow row at the bottom.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, it's more than wage savings. It's the cost of labor. It's looking at taxes and benefits as well. And the Optimus one includes insurance and charging and different things like that, some maintenance.
So in the box at the top, you've got Optimus hourly wage is now down to $7.20 an hour because it's working 120 hours for that $43,000 a year instead of working 40 hours. So the effective hourly wage drops from 21.60 to $7.20 because you've tripled the number of hours worked.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, so now let's keep in mind the numbers in the bottom in terms of the savings on an hourly basis. In the next couple of models I'm going to show you, I'm going to look at $10 per hour saved, and then another one where it's $20 per hour. But just know that it could be much greater than that. In some scenarios, it's, $30, $40, $50 an hour in savings. Here now is the model, assuming that Tesla sells the bots. And this is the first time I've presented the bots model where it's assuming Tesla sells the bots. And so Warren, I built this for you. And I wanted to do kind of a bottoms up analysis, first principles, and say, okay, how much can a company potentially save if The Tesla bot can save $10 an hour. That's the first blue line. Okay. At different number of hours worked per day, let's look at the economics. So from 10 hours a day up to 22. And let's assume the Tesla bot can save $10 an hour for this particular factory on average. If you multiply that out, then in a year, the bot is saving potentially 36,000 up to $80,000 per year in labor costs. If we assume that the bot lasts for 10 years, and if we assume just a 10% discount on the savings, so the savings in later years are worth less today because you need to earn basically the cost of capital, then the total potential savings over the bot's lifetime in today's dollars would be anywhere from 200,000 up to 420. By the way, this is not something that this just came out this way. It's funny how that works. And then my assumption here is that Tesla shares that savings benefit 50-50 with the purchaser of the bot. This is a base case. They split it down the middle. Tesla keeps half the labor savings, and the factory keeps half the labor savings. In that case, Tesla could sell the bot anywhere from $100,000 to $234,000 for each bot. So, Warren, I'm here to report that you're not completely crazy, right? And in fact, you might be low in terms of what Tesla could sell the bots for.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the idea that the bot's only going to work, I think some people think the bot's going to work 40 hours a week. And if the bot only works 40 hours a week, sure, the value is not that high, but the companies that are going to pay the most for bot are the companies that are going to get the most out of bot. And they're the ones that are going to have the most work for it. So, Tesla's factories typically work 3 shifts. Not always. I think the German factory might be working 2 shifts, but I think typically you're going to work 3 shifts. So, and a lot of businesses work 3 shifts. Hospitals work 3 shifts. It's pretty common. So,
That's right.
there's a lot of employers in society that work multiple shifts.
Yeah. And what I wanted to do though is follow this down and say, okay, let's look at the base case in the middle. Bot's working 16 hours a day only. The company buys it for 170,000. There are some other costs. So I'm assuming maintenance costs, 2.5% of the purchase price per year, right? Bought parts will need replacing and all that kind of stuff. Charging's pretty minimal. If it charges, 2.7 times a day, that's $380 a year. There are some costs for human minders. So the bots will need human shepherds or minders to help make sure that they stay on task and all that stuff. So there is some human labor that needs to go in here. And I'm assuming here that one human can 10 to 15 bots. Could be more, could be less, but it seems reasonable. There also will be some bot insurance. And then I've got a pretty healthy number for bot protective equipment, footwear, tools, that kind of thing for the bot in a factory environment. So there are additional costs, of $18,000 to $20,000 a year. So the actual savings goes down to about $39,000 per bot employed. A pretty healthy number for any manufacturer to consider.
Right.
So if you follow that through to, what's the return on investment? If they pay 170 and have all these benefits, then the internal rate of return is about 19% per year, and the payback period is just over 4 years. So a company, a factory, a warehouse operator would be willing to potentially pay quite a bit for bots that can deliver this kind of savings over this period of time.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, I was watching a video a while back where they were talking about selling Tesla solar and Tesla, I think, power walls and megapacks to businesses, and a return on investment where you break even in like 7 years is pretty good in the business world. So if you're going to get your return on investment in 4 years and you're going to continue to be getting value for 6 more years, then it's a pretty clear win for the business.
That's right. And again, this model, this particular scenario here is the bot working 16 hours a day only.
Okay, so I just want to add here, in my conversation with Larry Goldberg, one of the criticism, one of his I think most effective criticism, I don't agree with him, but his most effective criticism is that there will the comp it's pretty simply the competition is coming. That there will be other humanoid robots out there and they will compete and that will lower the price. And I actually don't agree. My response to him was, well, in 2 days we'll have the 8th anniversary of SpaceX landing the first orbital rocket booster. And where's the competition? No one else has launched a payload into orbit and brought the booster back and successfully recovered it capable of reuse 8 years later. And as far as I can tell, no one's really close. Rocket Lab, a little close, but it's a smaller rocket. I think maybe next year they might be able to pull something off. Blue Origin was Larry's example. Blue Origin should be doing a test launch of New Glenn next year. Like, what are the odds they stick the landing on their first attempt on a moving ship in the ocean? I'm going to say the odds are they're not going to stick the landing the first time. And then, given the pace that Blue Origin innovates at, they're probably not doing another test next year. So, Blue Origin, I really think the industry is like 10 years behind SpaceX. And I think that when it comes to what leads to success? I think you mentioned this early on. Tesla's manufacturing ability to manufacture efficiently at large scale, and then from the AI side, generating a large amount of data and having a lot of training compute. And then once you have a lead, you continue to accelerate, and it becomes hard for others to catch up. But what are your thoughts on the potential for competition to cut into the amount that Tesla can charge for a bot?
Yeah, I think leaving out whether competitors can do it technically is one question, and we've seen how difficult it is for companies to compete with SpaceX and even Tesla within the EV space. Leaving that out, Jeff Bezos always says that your margin is my opportunity. So it should be expected that other companies will enter this space if it is as attractive as it looks. And I'll show you in a second what it looks like for Tesla. Right now, we've just looked at it from the user's perspective. So if your margin is my opportunity, then we should expect competition. But if the savings for a company are this great, then there's no reason for the competition to undercut Tesla in price. There's enough for everybody. And if we're talking about the human labor market, this is, billions of jobs, billions of opportunities to place robots in factories,
Okay.
ultimately, once the robots are capable enough to do the work. So, I'm not so worried about price pressure for a long time until the market is saturated.
Right.
Then the price can come down.
Yeah, I often talk about people will say, "Oh, that Tesla's competing with other EV makers to sell cars." Is like, no, they're competing together to remove gas cars from the road. If 92% of the cars on the road are gas cars, and you make an EV that's not as good as a Tesla, but it's better than a gas car, you're not cutting into Tesla sales at all. You're cutting into the gas car company sales. And as far as I can see, nobody's making a better EV than Tesla. So they're not really competing with Tesla. It's like you're competing with Camry, you're competing with Highlander, you're competing with, you know, the Ford F-150. You're not competing with Tesla's vehicles. That's my take on it, and I think that's roughly what you're saying.
Yeah. It also may be that the competitors' robots just aren't quite as capable or not as durable or something different. So those might be priced at a lower price.
Right.
And then it becomes sort of, for a company, what do they value? Durability, reliability versus cost.
Well, and just want to touch on this really quick because I talked about this with Larry a bit. I think there's an issue with first mover advantage. That if Tesla builds a same thing with Starlink. Tesla's building out a fleet of communication satellites that are going to deliver internet service to rural customers who don't have access to broadband, wired broadband. Um, or maybe they don't have access to 5G, whatever it is. If you're going to launch a network that's going to compete for the same customers and your cost structure is higher and your quality is lower, and your capital investment is also higher. It's like, are you going to invest $100 billion to become number two in a market where you can't win? And I think the same thing with FSD, with developing a robotaxi network. How much would a company have to invest? You know, for the competition to come, the competition has to invest billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars to develop the same thing that Tesla is developing or that SpaceX is developing. And then they need to get a return on their investment. So if they get to the end of the road and they have a competing bot, and then they do end up in a price war with Tesla, well, then they lose because Tesla can undercut them on price, or they can just end up with the price so low that the new competitor doesn't make any profits, and then they don't get the return on investment for those billions they invested. So I think it becomes a point where it doesn't make sense to make that investment to compete with the first mover if you think the first mover, you're not going to be able to compete well with them.
That's right. What we're exploring here right now is how much Tesla could charge.
Yeah,
They could charge a lot less if they wanted to.
right.
And maybe when robots go in the home, they decide to do that for the benefit of humanity.
Yeah,
But in a factory environment, then you share the profit, 50-50 with your customer. That seems like a reasonable approach.
right.
So let me show you then what this looks like for Tesla's financials. So if we just focus on this base case in the middle, 170,000 that they sell the bot for, let's assume the bot costs 15,000 to make. Okay. Then the gross margin, if you've pointed this out, is 90%. Let's say there's another 15,000 in SG&A and R&D expenses and throw in taxes of 25%, then they're making $105,000 per bot sold, a 62% net margin. It's ridiculous. Now, even if the bot costs 30,000 to make and SG&A was another 30,000, their net income goes from 105 down to 83,000. It's still 49, almost 50% net margin. So there's a lot of room for Tesla to cut prices if they want to. There's a lot of room in this model to do all kinds of things.
Can you just briefly explain to the audience what net margin and gross margin are?
Yeah, so the gross margin is simply the amount of money that Tesla makes after the cost of manufacturing the item. But then they have to sell it. They have to, there's general corporate expenses, there's a whole host of other stuff involved in getting the bot out to market. And that's kind of the next line down under the operating expenses. And I just lumped in the selling, general, and administrative, as well as research and development into one line, just to simplify the model. And then the net margin is the profit after those costs plus taxes. The government gets, a tax on the corporate profit, and then the company shareholders get to keep the rest.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a very healthy model. Here's how it looks visually. I don't know of too many companies with a 60% net margin. It's a software like business in that sense.
Right. Well, it is. I mean, the value of bot is the software.
Yeah.
I mean, the hardware is a value, but if it can't, what is it? Boston Dynamics has a really cool bot, but it can't really operate in the real world in the way that we think Optimus will be able to operate. So the value is it's partly the hardware being able to make a hardware form that can do the tasks you want to do, but the primary value is probably the software.
That's right. And I think that's the thing that people are missing both with bots and with autonomous vehicles is the value creations in the software and the capability that the software brings to the vehicle or brings, in this case, to the bot.
Right.
So even if the costs were double, even if the cost to make a bot were 30,000 and SG&A and R&D were another 30, this would only lower the profit margin down to about 50% in this central case. So it's still tremendously profitable business, even if the bot costs more. I get a lot of pushback from people saying, well, the bot's not going to cost 15,000. It's going to cost way more than that. Well, the reality is, a Tesla Model Y weighs 30 times more, costs $40,000. Like, why would you think that a bot, which weighs 1/30th of a Model Y, would cost as much as a Model Y?
Yeah, 125 pounds versus let's say 4,000 pounds.
That makes no sense.
And then, the the Tesla has the car has to have all the safety equipment to protect in crashes, and you have to have different standards for different countries. So you have to manufacture it in different ways. You might have to move the steering wheel to the other side. There's so many things that go into um, making a car. And I think maybe the part count is another way. Like I think a car has like maybe 10,000 unique parts. Bot is probably going to have 1,000 unique parts. That's a guess. I mean, I don't know what the number is going to be.
Yeah.
And then
And
also, like
granted, the
you need really large equipment to manufacture a car because the car is so heavy and the parts are so
Mhm.
large. I think the robots that make the bots, the equipment that's making the bots, is going to be a lot smaller. The factory space needed to make the bots is going to be a lot smaller. There's a lot of advantages.
That's right. Yep. And so then here is the same model at $20 of savings per hour. In that case, Tesla could sell the bots between 200 and 469,000. There's that number
Right,
again.
right. 469, 420. We got to get that in there.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, the central case is $341,000, which seems like a crazy amount of money, but I'm just following the math through the model. The annual savings to the customer are $89,000 a year. The payback period is now under 4 years. It's an IRR of over 22%. And for Tesla, it's a $200,000 profit per bot. Okay. And in this one, I assumed that the bot cost 30 and the SG&A were 30. I just went ahead and upped the cost just to show that here. It's still massively profitable. And this is actually double the profit from the previous scenario. Um, so again, that's just looking at 10 and $20 per hour in labor savings. And we saw earlier that that could range actually up to $40, $50 an hour savings at the higher end. So there's a lot of ability for Tesla to price the bot at what appear to be crazy prices, but are really not.
Yeah, and I just want to say really quick, we come up with really crazy numbers when we talk about this. And I think something people need to understand is, look, assume we're crazy. Cut our numbers in half. Cut our numbers 5x. If we're say $100,000, if you know you've got a number here, $200,000 in net income per bot, make it $50,000 in net income per bot. You still,
Right.
when we get to the end of this story, the numbers are still insanely positive for Tesla shareholders.
The potential definitely is there, um, no matter what scenario you can envision, basically. Now, there are some problems with this. So that's all the rosy stuff. Let's talk about some of the challenges. So this is looking at it again from a factory perspective, and I'm using an example that Scott Walter and I have used previously, where let's say imagine a factory with 2,500 workers. And just to simplify things, we've got four different pay scales for different skill levels of the workers, right? And so these folks are different wage levels, hourly wage levels. And the first scenario here is one shift. And let's assume that each worker is replaced by one bot. So in theory, you get rid of 2,500 workers, you replace them with 2,500 bots. Now, as I said earlier, you do need some people to monitor the bots. And so I've got bot minders that can each manage 15 bots. So you would need to hire 167 bot minders. And I'm assuming here that you're hiring them at the skill level 4. These need to be very skilled people to manage, maintain the bots. Okay. In the green here, by firing all the workers, you are that those folks cost 181 million per year. And to replace them with the bots plus the minders, you're going to pay 144 million. So you're saving 38 million a year. It's a 21% labor savings. Again, keep in mind this is one shift. Here's the problem. You're losing not only those wages for those people, there's a net, 38 million, or there's a net 181 million gone. Sorry, a little bit less because we need to take into account that you're actually hiring some people to be bot minders. So the wage losses aren't quite this high, but pretty high. But the big hit is taxes. And I think that governments are going to have a problem with this if this is what happens. I'm not suggesting that this is what will happen, but if the bots are going to be as capable as we think they could be at some point in the future, and if they can replace all these different skills in the factory, there would be a huge incentive for the factory operators to replace their human labor with bots. And then the hit to taxes is enormous.
Well, wait a minute. I just want to cut in there for a second. The hit to taxes is enormous if you ignore the taxes that are generated on the additional profits made by Tesla and by the customer, the factory. So if the factory makes higher profits and they're paying a 25% tax rate on their profits, and if Tesla is paying a 25% tax on its profits, though that tax revenue might be higher than the tax revenue lost from the workers. And also, this assumes that the workers don't find other work. There's this popular perception,
Right.
and I think even Elon shares this perception. So, I'm sort of out there saying, and I'm not the
Yeah.
only one who feels this way. No, the bots will free up humans to do higher value tasks, higher value work. And I think we've had tremendous technological change throughout human history. There are some people say, well, this time is different. They said that every time before, that this time is different. And every time before, they were wrong. And we just can't anticipate what jobs will be created. But most likely, based on past history, we will find more work for humans, or humans will find more and better work to do that will be more rewarding personally and generate more value and generate more income for the humans and generate more taxes for the governments. Although I personally would say, let's get rid of all these governments and take away all their money. But that's not a view I expect to prevail. Sorry, go
Right.
ahead.
No, I think you make some excellent points. There is this notion of the lump of labor fallacy, where there's a fixed amount of labor necessary in the world. That's not true. The labor, as things get cheaper, we get more efficient, then we need more and more labor to build new things. So absolutely, there would be new jobs available for some people. There would be additional tax revenue from the higher profits from the factory, from Tesla, definitely. But it is an open question about whether that would be enough to cover the shortfall. And the shortfall gets kind of crazy in the two shift scenario, and then we'll just jump to the three shift scenario. Um, Here you're hiring 500 bot minders, so it's more than you had originally at the higher wage scenario in the factory. But you're replacing 7,500 people, you're hiring 500 back, and you have 2,500 bots. Massive labor savings to the company, so you can certainly see where their motivation would be. And then the tax hit, all things being equal, is large. But again, to your point, that would be offset by a few factors. This also assumes that 7,000 people don't find new work, and that I think is a ridiculous assumption to make. That there will be new jobs. There always has been in history with technology. It's very easy to see the jobs that will be lost. It's very hard to see into the future to see the jobs that will be created, and that's your point.
Yeah, well, nobody saw social media marketing as a job 20 years ago. Nobody
Right.
saw search engine optimization as a job maybe 30 years, maybe 25 years ago, nobody saw search engine optimization as a job. There's I mean, I'm a content creator. I'm a social media influencer. I think there's a lot of different things. And then I would say, like, okay, now that I'm a Teslaonaire, right? I've made enough money on Tesla stock that I'm a millionaire, and I have the freedom and the time, and I actually live fairly cheap. I can start up a new business to do something else, and I can create jobs that nobody even thought. I have a business idea I want to pursue. Somebody else has a business idea they want to pursue. If you end up creating all this value for shareholders, some of us are going to say, "Hey, I've got a business idea. I want to start this," and like I'm probably going to fail. Keep in mind, I think I'm going to succeed. I'm so stupid. I think I'm actually going to succeed at building cloud cars or solar farm homes or something. I'm going to find a way, but some people will succeed, and those people will create jobs we haven't anticipated. I mean, I think,
Right.
like prompt engineering is this new concept with AI. Nobody 10 years ago, or even probably 4 years ago, would have thought prompt engineering was a skill or a job or whatever. And now it looks like, okay, prompt engineering is like, I don't think we've even begun to grasp how valuable prompt engineering is going to be. Is that a career in the future? I don't know. I think
Yeah.
so.
No, I think those are excellent points, and it remains to be seen. Um, let's pivot now to looking at robots as a service, just so we can compare and contrast the two approaches. This is the way that I originally looked at it. We talked about the pros and cons at the beginning. This is how the model looks for robots as a service. And this comes back now to the $3,600 a month that I showed on the first slide and the 43,200 a year in revenue to Tesla.
Sorry, just to make people aware, I want to be clear what we're saying here. Before we talked about if Tesla sold the bots to customers, to businesses. Now we're talking about if Tesla, rather than selling one fixed price, you get the bot for 10 years. Now they're paying maybe a monthly or annual rate to have the bot available to them, right?
That's correct. You're getting the robot as a service. If the bot needs repair, replacement, the new one shows up, you don't have to worry about it. You get the latest and greatest bot on a periodic basis. Every 2 or 3 years you get a new one, or depending on what your needs are. If it's working for you, then you wouldn't get a new one if the bot lasts 10 years. But if you had demands for a bot that had better performance, then Tesla would just give you that bot. Now you might pay per month based on the capabilities and the newness of the bot and all that stuff. You might pay more, but it's robot as a service.
Yeah, I just had this like wacky thought. Forgive me, this is off the charts stupid, but you know, the bot works in the factory for 3 years, and then the factory gets a new model. Well, what do they do with the old bot? Well, that goes into the home, and now you got a bot with repetitive stress disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder from all that factory work.
Just just think of all the stories it can tell you in its retirement years of its experience in the factory.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, we're back to the assumption here that the bot costs 15,000 to make. It lasts 10 years, so Tesla has an annual capital cost of 1,500. We've got 15,000 in selling and R&D expenses. And I'm introducing something new here, and this was in my original model, the idea of a robot tax. I call it the robot tax.
To Rob.
And this one I'm using
Nice.
25%. In my original model, I had 33. I'm just using 25 in this example. And in addition to that, there's 25% of corporate income tax. So Tesla makes about $12,000 a year on each bot, and the government receives about $14,000-15,000 a year. So the government actually has more tax revenue than Tesla makes in profit. Now, whether that's a good thing or not is debatable, right? Governments, that much tax revenue, they can waste it and all that. But this might be some way to help ease the transition for people that are displaced until they can find new work, because there might be education that's necessary to go from a factory into some other kind of job.
Well,
So,
we need to bomb more countries. So, if we have more tax revenue, we can bomb more countries.
right, right. So this is how that looks. The margin looks lower. The annual profit looks lower, right? But here's the comparison of taxes. The government makes more tax revenue than Tesla makes in net profit. That makes Tesla a little bit less of a target for politicians, potentially. And then this one contrasts the two approaches. The orange line is selling bots. The blue line is robots as a service. Now, let me first say that these two scenarios I created aren't totally apples to apples. There are some differences in them, one being that I included a robot tax in the robots as a service model, and I did not include a robot tax of any kind under the selling bot scenario. But it's still instructive because when you sell the bots, it results in a faster ramp of revenue and profits than if you just take the bot as a subscription service. It takes a longer time to ramp. But the benefits start to play out over time, particularly if there's ever a disruption. Let's say there's another pandemic or some other factory shutdown that causes Tesla not to be able to produce many bots in a given year. Then if they sold the bots, they would take a big hit to their revenue and profits in that 1 year. It results in a much more volatile earning stream and probably more volatile stock.
So let me see if I
Whereas
understand. Just the model that you're showing is this is the revenue generated by one bot.
this is the profit.
The profit generated by one bot, not
No, sorry, this is over time depending on the number of bots in service.
oh,
So
okay.
as we get up to, 16 million, 36 million, here's the total profit to Tesla in billions of dollars.
Okay.
So this 5,000 here is 5 trillion.
Okay.
Okay. We're talking about some big numbers here. And as you get out to, a billion bots in service, you're looking at, 10 plus trillion dollars of profit.
Okay, that's pessimistic, but I'll go with it.
Sure. And then in the out years, once Tesla gets to the point where the bots that are retiring or being taken out of service is the same as the new bots being produced, then you kind of flatline on your profit. Whereas the robots as a service continues to grow as long as the fleet is growing. But at some point, if the fleet, let's say, tops out at 2 billion, then that model also flattens out. And at that point, you might only get, small increases in profit if you're able to charge more.
Okay, so let me just a couple of points that I want to hit. I'm currently in Bangkok, Thailand, and wages are lower in Southeast Asia than they are in America and Europe and Japan. Um, so there are places in the world where workers don't make $20 an hour, they make $20 a day. So
Mhm.
the I think there's a couple things going on here. One is, the value of selling bot to a business in India where wages are very, very low is far less than the value of selling bot in Japan, the US, Europe, Australia, but there's certain countries that are wealthier. But I also think one of the things that we miss is we really haven't talked about the abundance. Like we describe it as okay, there's this factory and there's 2,500 workers, and it replaces the 2,500 workers, and you put some bot miners in. What we don't talk about is well, the factory becomes so much more productive that they make twice as much stuff and they end up employing twice as many bots as they had humans and twice as many bot minders as you put down there. And it's
Right.
really hard to evaluate what that does. And if you get what I think this does, and I think Elon thinks this as well, if you generate massive economic growth, right? If you become more efficient, you generate abundance, then you generate massive economic growth, then you might end up creating more bot minder jobs than you had jobs before. That's just like I hadn't even thought about the bot minder career. I was talking about the prompt engineer career. The bot minder career might be a big opportunity, and we know who knows what other opportunities we'll see out there. So
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity for bot miners. There's also an opportunity to make specialized tools for bots
yeah,
that, if a bot's going to have a Swiss Army knife, for example, it's not going to look like the one that we use.
yeah, no, and I did want to mention also that we talk about them working in a factory. I think one of the most important use cases for bot at some point in the future will be assisted living facilities and nursing homes to care for the elderly.
Yeah.
My mother was in an assisted living facility. It is literally a crappy job, quite literally, because one of the jobs is to clean up the crap when one of the residents makes a mess. Um, and if you could free up the humans in the assisted living facility to focus on caring for the person, the mind of the person, the emotions of the person, while the bot is focused on cleaning up the mess or dealing with other mundane tasks, and it frees up the humans to care for humans. We may end up in a world with large language models and other AI that the bots are actually better at caring for people on an emotional level than humans. I don't know. I mean, I suppose there's a pretty strong case for that too. But I just think there's so many use cases that people don't wrap their heads around. And nursing home work is just really unpleasant work. And what's the mission for bot to some extent? It's doing work that's dangerous, repetitive, and boring. So working with human waste is actually dangerous to humans. Working with elderly people who say the same thing over and over again and ask the same questions over and over again is repetitive and boring. And so there's a lot of work out there that it's really hard to find people to do. who are willing to do that work. And if you can get bots to do the work that humans don't want to do, it frees humans up to do other things. I just think there's this huge gain to society of unleashing this humanoid robot, artificial intelligence on the world in massively positive ways that, and like, again, because I saw my mother going through that, because some of the workers in one of the places that she was in did not speak English well, and my mother only spoke English, that made it more uncomfortable for her. Well, Bot's going to speak whatever language, I've used ChatGPT. ChatGPT speaks whatever language you want, right? That
Yeah,
all the bots will speak every language on the planet.
that's right.
So there's
Yeah.
so much gain here, and I'm just going to go off on a little side note. There's all these people who are worried about the danger of bots, and I feel like people massively underappreciate the value generation this is for humanity. So sorry, I went off on a tangent there. Let's
No, I think you're right. And actually, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that are older that are excited about having a bot as a helper, a potential caregiver, a companion, someone that they can talk to, someone that they can learn from. If the bot has all the knowledge of the human race in its head or accessible to it, then you could have a conversation about anything and everything until your heart's content,
Okay.
right? Whereas a human caregiver may not be capable of that. They may not be aware of many things that you might want to talk about. They may also have a bad day. They may be sick. They may be unreliable in some way. They may be distracted. They may not be as caring as you'd like them to be. Whereas a bot is going to be consistent. It's not going to be judgmental. It's going to be reliable. There's so many different benefits, so many levels.
Yeah, another one is if you have a facility currently, and let's say there's one worker for every 10 residents. So let's say you have a facility with 100 elderly people and you have 10 people working there. You probably have more than that, but let's say you have 20 people working in there. If you're able to reduce to, you know, 40 bots and 2 and 3 humans, right? The bots aren't going to carry infections, right? One of the problems that we had in
Right.
recent years was the spread of an infectious disease in elderly populations. If you
Yeah,
have fewer humans who might working with the elderly people, you're going to have less disease transmission in the facility, and that's arguably a plus, at least arguably.
that's right. And also, from the loneliness standpoint, if you have a bot that you can talk to, that reduces loneliness tremendously, particularly if the bot sounds like somebody that you're familiar with,
Yep. Oh,
right? That's possible.
and when we were in the middle of that effectively lockdown, the elderly people in my mother's facility were largely confined to their rooms alone for I mean, they would come out occasionally. There was some human interaction, but they had much less interaction with others. And so if a bot was able to come in, large language model, the bot might even be able to have a screen on its face and facilitate communication with your family. There's so many different ways this could be a huge plus.
Yeah, and I didn't even take it a step further. And I discussed this a little bit with Herbert recently, but I see actually the bot as potentially a new computing platform
Yeah.
that actually is the dominance of Apple and Microsoft and Google and Amazon and all those big tech companies. Because if the bot is capable of interfacing with the world, then why does Google need to advertise to me? The bot's going to do my shopping and answer my emails and stuff like that for me potentially, right? So it changes the business models of a lot of those companies.
Yeah. That was one of my personal use cases for bot is I'm going to the grocery store and I say, like, this is in the bot beta program. I say, go get me a half gallon of milk.
Right.
Right? The bot walks off and gets the gallon of milk and comes back. And Larry's like, oh, no, 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 no. We can't let the bot wander off in the grocery store by itself.
Well, the bot would be great for restocking the store after hours,
Yeah, that's another good
that
one.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have some questions for you. So yeah, so if we take our bot shopping, what happens when two bots meet each other? What do they do? Do they talk to each other? Do they exchange skills?
Oh, I don't think the bots um learn skills on their the understanding that I have of AI today is that the bots experience the world. when they encounter something that they don't get correctly or they think they could do better, which is what happens with the cars now, the data gets uploaded to a central training supercomputer, and the training gets sent back down to all the cars or bots. Um, so rather than individual bots training each other, they're all learning from the mothership up in Palo Alto or wherever it happens to be. So I don't think now, do they talk to each other? I would guess that the bots probably have some sort of wireless communication, and they don't, the idea that the bots are going to stop and communicate with each other wirelessly and like stand there and have a conversation. No, they're going to go about doing whatever they're doing, and they can have that conversation even if they're on opposite sides of the store. If they need to communicate with each other, they might. I could even see where, like, I go to the store with my bot, you go to the store with your bot. The bots have lists of what they're supposed to get, and the bots communicate with each other. Hey, you go get these three things. I'll go get these three things. We'll meet in the middle and we exchange. I suppose it's possible that the bots will. I don't. I think that's probably unnecessary. There may be some added efficiencies from having the bots coordinate when you go in, and we may just have some completely different model for how shopping occurs at that point. You send the list to the store's
Right.
bots assemble your stuff. That stuff's waiting for your bot goes and picks it up and brings it home. Um, I don't know how that's all. The many ways that this can work out, and we'll probably see a whole bunch of different models that will compete against each other, and the best ways of using bots will win. And that's going to be another opportunity for humans to figure out what's the best way for us to use bots in this application, in that application, in that application. I'm running a fast food restaurant. What's the best way to use bots in this business? I'm running a warehouse. What's the best way to use bots in this warehouse? And then I'm running a food warehouse versus a merchant book warehouse, right? There's all different kinds of applications, and having humans saying, how can we best use the bots? That's probably another job for humans.
How about this scenario where the bot is somewhere and it encounters a human bully who is messing with the bot in some way? Like we've already seen this with those robotic delivery services, those little wheeled vehicles that drive down the streets and people sit on them or tip them over. How is Optimus going to respond to a human bully?
Well, it's going to do no harm. Now it's entirely possible that bot will learn to defend itself without harming. As the bots improve in their, I'm not sure about this because Elon does not want the bot to be dangerous. And if it's able to defend itself, does it? I mean, you could even go another step. What if a bot sees one human bullying another human? Does the bot step in the middle? And I think the general answer is, at least for now, no. The bot probably, if you abuse honestly, if somebody is abusing your car, right? Somebody comes up and starts punching your car and dents your car, well, then you call the police and the person gets arrested for causing property damage, and you sue them, or they part of their court proceeding is they've got to pay for the damage that they did, their criminal proceeding. I don't see how that would be different. And bot would simply record the encounter and upload the encounter to the cloud or whatever, and the police would get the video and probably be able to identify the individual. One of the other things that is a little bit unnerving about this is there's going to be so many cameras in the world that the guy could like have a mask on, right? And you don't know who it
Mhm.
is. But
Yep.
wherever he goes, there's bots watching him. There's cars
Right.
watching him. Right? There's an infinite number of cameras, so there's nowhere to like. At some point, you're going to take the mask off, and there's going to be a bot nearby, or you're going to go into your home, and the bots will be able to follow your trail from where you committed the crime to where you stopped. And the police, and the police are called, and the police will be following you based on where the bots tell them you are. So I think you end up now, to some extent, that's uncomfortable because we might not like being watched all the time. But I would say if we're not doing something wrong, the bots aren't triggered to like follow us and pay attention to what we're doing. They're busy doing their own thing.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a Black Mirror episode in there. Um,
Does does this scenario change your thinking if the bot is walking your dog and it encounters a bully? Or if the bot is walking your kids to school and encounters a bully, does the bot's behavior change in that scenario? Because it's there overseeing something. It's not just operating on its own.
With the dog, I would say it doesn't change. Um, but with the children, yeah. But I think that that's, crime happens. And honestly,
Yeah.
if I'm walking with my children and some bully approaches, let's say it's my fictional 5 foot tall, 100 pound wife, right, who's walking the children to school and a bully comes into play. Well, my
Mhm.
5 foot tall, 100 pound wife is not going to be able to protect the children from a 250 pound bully, right? The bot might actually be better capable. And what I would suggest is the bot probably tells the kids run, and he gets in the way of the bully as much as possible, and is probably better able to keep the bully from getting to the children. But you can't. I don't think bot is a solution to crime. I
Right.
do think there's this issue that if we have, so there's two issues. One, if we have this ubiquitous camera situation and you commit a crime and you will be caught, then you have this second problem. If this happens in San Francisco, right, and the bots identify this is the guy who beat up the woman and beat up the children, and then the prosecutor says, well, we're taking into account his family history and his oppression, and so we're not going to prosecute him. Well, then the problem isn't the bot. But if you have, so like I lived in Florida and I monitored, this is going off topic a bit, but I ran something called West Boca News, which still exists, but it's not mine anymore. And I would do a weekly crime report or maybe twice a week crime report. And I would be looking through these criminal cases and I would see these people who had like 20 arrests or 30 arrests. And this is very different from what I saw in upstate New York where I lived before, which was, and I was a criminal defense lawyer, keep in mind. Um, if my client had been arrested 3 times, there are consequences. The more times you're arrested, the more consequences you face. And it seemed like in Florida, you'd get arrested like 20 times and you'd keep getting slaps on the wrist. And this is in Palm Beach County, Florida, to be clear, and Broward County, Florida. I think there are other parts of Florida that are not that way, and they do hold people accountable. So there's a much larger question there of, are you living in a place where the government system, the prosecutorial system, the police system holds people, criminals accountable for their behavior? Currently, our school, I'm going off on a tangent here, but what I saw as a substitute teacher in the schools in Palm Beach County, Florida, and what I'm aware of in Broward County, Florida, this is Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale, is the poorly behaved students are protected from the consequences of their behavior. And the teachers who dare to hold poorly behaved students accountable for their behavior are held accountable improperly
Hmm.
for holding the students accountable. So it's not a great situation if you ask me. But that's a social problem that doesn't have a lot to do with bots. And I
Well,
think the bots enable the ubiquity of cameras, the ubiquity of recording, the recognition, hey, this is something I should record and send up to the mothership or send to the police, makes it a lot easier to reduce crime because the criminal now knows I'm going to be caught and I'm going to be held accountable. Then you have a lot less crime. If you have a situation where you're not likely to be caught or you're not likely to be held accountable when you are caught, well, then the criminals are going to commit more crime. And I was a criminal defense lawyer. Some people are criminals, but they are often somewhat rational, and they often recognize I don't want to do this if I'm going to be going to prison.
how about this scenario then, where, we all get along with our neighbors, right?
Yeah.
And you instruct your bot to, let's say, pull the weeds in your garden. I'm just picking an example. And the neighbor, for some reason, has made you upset, and you instruct your bot to go pull up the flowers in the neighbor's yard.
Hmm.
So does the bot need to be geofenced so that you don't cause trouble for other people?
I
Right? Like
think
is
I think that as you go along, the bot will know not to follow that instruction. If you give a bot the instruction to do something that's illegal, the bot won't do it. If you try to get your Tesla to drive the wrong way, if you have self-driving Tesla, you can't tell it to drive the wrong way on a one-way street. It won't do it.
yeah.
You have to take over. So I think that it's likely that the bot will, as it develops real world AI, it will understand what it's allowed to do and what it isn't allowed to do. And if you give it an instruction to do something that's illegal, it will say, well, I can't do that. That's illegal. That,
Okay.
you know, there will be missteps along the way where the bot doesn't understand the real world well enough yet. But I think understanding which is the property that I'm assigned to work on and which is the property I'm not assigned to work on probably won't be that challenging.
Okay. How about this one? I have a bot in my home and I have a wife and two kids, and I give the bot an instruction to do something, right? And then my wife decides that she wants to give the bot an instruction to do something. I guess there has to be a hierarchy of instruction, the orders of instruction. Who has the authority? Like, can the kids tell the bot to do something then that overrides what I want it to do? And how does the bot deal with conflicting instructions?
Yeah, on that one, I would guess that that would be programmable by the consumer. I think there's many ways of handling that, but I think the primary way of handling it is like, well, you know, my Tesla account, the Tesla account says Cern is the owner of the bot. So when Cern gives it a command, Cern's command rules. Now,
Right.
Cern might, you like literally might have that as a feature set in the settings for the bot, like, who's priority. I tend to think these things are, I don't even know if I want to say they're edge cases. Um, you know, you really have this question. The bot is engaged in performing a task. So you say, hey, bot, go get me a beer and bring me my slippers. And the bot is walking to get you your beer and bring you your slippers. And then your wife says, hey,
Here's the vacuum.
would you go fold the laundry? The bot would
Yeah.
say, I'm taking care of this other task first. I'll be done in a minute, and then I'll go take care of the laundry. And if she says, no, 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 I want you to, you know, he's gonna at some point the bot is programmed. If it said this is what I'm doing, he says, well, I have my commands from him. That's just how they're programmed. And I just think that's sort of like it's an interesting question. I think there's probably many ways of resolving that question. Like, I'm doing this task first. I'll get to your task next. I imagine the comedy of the bot saying to your wife, "I'm getting, Cern a beer and his slippers first, and then I'll take care of folding laundry next." And she's like, "You always do what he wants." You
Exactly.
Um,
That would not be acceptable to her. That would be like having two husbands in that case for her.
sure. So, in the simple
But
solution to that is she gets her own bot.
that's what I was going to say. There'd be another bot pretty quick.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll see bots the size of children?
I think we're going to see bots in many forms. I personally think one of the big forms that we're going to see, the biggest gain that I see in the future for a form of bot, which is probably not a humanoid bot, is bots designed to install solar panels on roofs. I think there's a huge need to install solar panels on roofs. I think it's a high labor cost. It's a dangerous job for humans. I think something like a spider bot, I'm making it up that it's a spider bot, but something with a low center of gravity and multiple limbs
Hmm.
might be a really good bot for installing solar panels on roofs. And I'm not sure that's the correct form, but that's something that when you think about that, we probably want to do like at least 5 million roofs a year in America. And the primary cost isn't the panels, it's the labor.
Right.
And if somebody falls off the roof, the workers' comp, that's something you kind of hinted at in your model. The workers' comp cost of being on a roof, the damage when somebody falls 30 feet. It's like if you fall 10 feet, you might be okay, you might break something. You fall 20 feet, you're definitely going to break something. You might have a serious injury and some chance of death. You fall 30 feet, you're probably dead.
Yeah.
Um, Not definite, but the really, really high risk from these falls. And a lot of roofs, you're 30 feet up. So if you can have bots that are optimized for installing roof panels or solar panels on roofs or solar roof tiles, that's a game changer. So that's one kind of bot I think we're going to see. I'm not sure what the value add is for a child-sized bot. I can definitely see the value in a dog bot. Um, and I also think there's a tremendous potential for very small bots. One of my favorite ideas, I'm going off on a big tangent here, but one of my favorite ideas is just Florida being a prime example of this. Florida has a sinkhole problem. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the sinkhole problem.
Yes.
There's basically all these things going on underground, typically involving flows of water in underground rivers and things like that.
Hmm.
And in some circumstances, they sort of erode the what's underneath the ground and can suck your house into a sinkhole. And I think there's a value in having bots that can go into the underground water flows, travel maybe streams of bots that radio information back, and then map out all these underground water flows to give us a better idea of where sinkholes are likely to occur, what we can do to prevent them, help insurance companies figure out what insurance they should charge in different places. And I think that form of bot would be very small and would be a good swimmer. Just, I mean, that's just one random idea. And I think there's a really large number of applications. I think another really big application is space, the moon,
Hmm.
Mars, building Jeff Bezos's O'Neill colonies.
Yep.
There's so many applications for bots that are really high value, and might end up with a really small form factor bot that doesn't cost that much. Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing, when I think about bots and kids, and this also relates to adults, I suppose, is that the kid will never need to clean his or her own room again. The bot would do it for them.
Is
And
that a
same
good
thing
thing?
with adults. Why would I ever make my bed? Why would I ever clean the dishes? Why would I ever put anything away in my house when the bot can just walk behind me and pick up after me? So humans could become the ultimate slobs in that sense because we have somebody walking behind us cleaning up after us.
I think there's a challenge there of how do humans maintain character in a world where everything is taken care of for them, for
Yeah.
us. And like there's so many people who consume so much entertainment. They watch Netflix, they watch whatever, there's all this video, I don't know what your situation is. There's all this video content that's being produced professionally by Hollywood, on all these different platforms. And I watch like basically none of it. I watch podcasts of people like you and me talking about
Right.
topics that I think are interesting. And I spend a lot of time interacting with people on social media platforms. But this sitting there on the couch eating potato chips, watching something, or eating popcorn, watching something, is to me such a waste of our value as humans. And there's a value in enjoying life. I get that. Um, but I do think that it's important for humans to develop character. And I think it's important for children to be challenged and to have to do things that are hard. At the same time, when I was a kid, we didn't really use calculators much and we didn't have computers to do our homework. And my kids had all that and they developed character. So I
Hmm.
think technology can be helpful in helping kids develop character. I don't know if I even answered your question. I just sort of went off on a tangent there.
Yeah, I don't know that there's an answer to the question other than we can foresee that it's going to change the way that we behave for good or bad. Um,
Yeah. I think
you know
that I
what?
think we've seen massive technological change for easily 100 years, arguably 200 years, but really the last 50, 100 years has been crazy technological change. And if you follow Steven Pinker, Better Angels of Our Nature, we've gotten better as a species. We have behaved largely better. Our murder rates are down, our
Mhm.
traffic fatality rates are down. We have become better humans, not worse. There's this story being told that, oh, that old generation had character, and we don't have character. I'm like, well, I think the good people, the really quality people from that generation really went through a lot and really did demonstrate a lot of character. But I think that's a pretty big underestimate of the character of current generations. And I don't, to some extent, the character we developed is because of what our parents raised us. So we developed good character because our parents trained us to have good character. We do see some behaviors that we don't like in the world today, but every generation says, "Oh, kids these days." But we really on the whole, I think we've become better, and I think technology helps us become better.
Yeah, no, I think I would agree with that too. I think when I look at this, what bots give us the ability to do is free us from toil, whatever that means.
Dangerous, repetitive, and boring work.
right? I mean, if just look at the home, 100 years ago, we didn't have dishwashers. We didn't have clothes washers and dryers, refrigerator, like all this stuff that we had in our home to free us up. And so now here's the bot to free us up from everything else.
I don't have a dishwasher now, damn it.
Right. So,
Dishwashers aren't common in Bangkok, Thailand.
yeah. But what this continues is a trend of giving our time back. And the question is, how do we choose to use the time? Because ultimately that's the most limited resource that any human has, is the amount of time we have. And the ultimate question for humanity is, what are we going to do with the extra time that we get back from not being involved in things that are toil?
I vote for making babies and raising children.
And maybe that happens because raising kids might become a lot easier than it is now and
Yeah,
a
this
lot
is
more
actually,
fun.
well, so, and we're going off on a wild tangent, but there's this perception that people aren't having children because it's hard or because it's expensive. And the reality is we have more resources now than our parents and grandparents did. And our parents had more children than we do, and our grandparents had more children than they did. So the difference is that um, I don't I shouldn't say that. I think there's a lot of reasons why we're having fewer children, and I don't think money or effort is the explanation for it. It's that I think to some extent we've created a selfish culture. We're good in a lot of ways, but we're focused on so many people are like, oh, I want to travel. I've been dating. I just had a date was it lunch today? I had a date, and I'm very clear when I'm talking to people on my dating app profile, dating app profile, and when I'm in it came up in conversation, she asked me the question, I want to have kids. And a lot of people are like, but I wouldn't be able to travel. Like, life. I think she said that she was trying to figure out where she was living was boring and she wanted to live somewhere that was more exciting. It's like, well, having kids looks boring to single people. What they don't
Mhm.
realize is how exciting it is to watch your kids grow.
Right.
And that doesn't mean you have to go to a foreign country to watch your kid grow. You watch your kid grow in your living room, and it's exciting to see your kid. And nothing is more meaningful than that. But we've lost that sense for a variety of reasons. People don't see it the way I saw it when I was a kid.
If selfishness is the issue, then bots won't help with that because
Right.
bots will indulge our every need,
Yeah. No,
right?
and
It
then
becomes even more about us.
one of my friends has got a lot of money and he's spending it um, having endless short-term relationships with random women. And it's not a choice I would make. He seems happy. I'm not sure that's ultimately fulfilling. I've tried to
Right.
tell him on the, having kids is really cool. I don't think I'm winning that argument.
Well, humans, we're all different in some ways, right? I mean, that's many different pathways through life. Um,
I'm going to
you know,
disagree with you on that. Yes, we're all different. There's this philosophical question, why are we here? And there's actually an answer to that question that people don't realize is an answer to that question. We are here because every one of our ancestors dating back to single cell organisms had children.
yeah,
We are here to have children. It is the primary purpose of our existence. And there are people who believe in the theory of evolution, but they reject evolution in practice.
yeah,
If you believe in the theory of evolution, then you should be trying to have kids. And if you believe in the theory of evolution, you should believe in meritocracy because evolution is the ultimate meritocracy. And we have people who oppose meritocracy and they oppose having children. And then they say that anybody who doesn't believe in science, doesn't believe in evolution, they're anti-science. Like, well, wait a minute. If you're not practicing evolution, then you don't believe in science. So I'm sorry, I went off on a wild tangent there. I keep doing this.
I mean, these are all the big questions that come out,
Yeah,
from this discussion, right? There's lots of different things.
yeah.
Um, Final thing to touch on is sports. So one of the things I think about is I think that robot sports will be a thing, but the question is there a role for human coaches as it relates to training robots for different sports?
Um, I think we already have robot sports. Um, there are autonomous vehicle competitions. There's these like bot competitions. I
Hmm.
don't think the bots are really truly autonomous in those competitions. You know, they're like they have the bots fight each other. I think they're actually remote control bots rather than autonomous bots. Um, I think those competitions are out there and not many people watch them. And people watch human competition because they want to see humans face challenges. We identify with other humans competing. I don't think we identify with machines competing. When we have race cars, right? People are more interested in the driver than they are in the car.
Sure.
I don't think that's likely to change. Um, but certainly we have. I mean, um, I've made a couple of videos, and I'm probably going to make at least one more. There's the it's called Student Formula. It's a competition. Each country or region has a competition where students build vehicles, and then they go out to a competition and they compete. They don't race against each other in the same race, but they'll who's got faster acceleration, who performs this autocross competition better, who's got better braking, who passes the inspections. There are all these things that they do. And um, there are autonomous vehicle competitions, and there are humans who are like managing the autonomous vehicle. I think I made a video about one in Japan, in Tokyo, Japan. And there are humans there that are working to like make sure the bot is programmed, the autonomous vehicle is programmed correctly at this moment, or like it doesn't do it right, so they like tweak the programming a little bit and they get another try, and they tweak the programming again,
Hmm.
they get another try. This already happens just at a very small scale, and the practical reality is that most humans aren't interested in watching that. So I suppose it's possible that at some point bots will be entertaining to watch. I think especially as they deploy real world AI in the bots and they develop real world if they develop actual personalities, it may become easier for us to identify with the bot as a competitor. I actually think that there's a really strong prospect. Let's get out of sports. Let's go to entertainment. You're going to be able to say to your phone or your television, I want to see a movie about blah, 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 blah. You're going to prompt engineer your television to make a video for you that you want to watch.
Right.
And I actually think that one of the things that's likely to happen, people have already seen that Instagram models are starting to get outcompeted by AI Instagram, by fake, AI generated Instagram models. I think we're within 2 or 3 years of adult performers, people engaging in sexual acts on screen being replaced by AI generated videos like that. And ultimately, I think Hollywood celebrities, like you will have like the ultimate, take The Rock and Tom Cruise and merge that into one AI generated super action hero who doesn't need a stuntman because it's all AI, computer generated. I think we could end up with celebrities who are completely AI generated, and you might see Hollywood stars fade in terms of earning power because why would I
Hmm.
pay to see Tom Cruise when I can see AI Tom Cruise? And
Right.
I think there's an interesting question of whether, and I think this is already happening to some extent. I think there was some, I think it was an adult actress who created an AI version of herself and is monetizing the AI version of herself. I think Grimes might even be doing something like that. Not adult, right? Not adult acting, but
Yeah.
so I think that you may be like, who's the biggest celebrity at the moment that this becomes possible? And so you have AI Scarlett Johansson
Right.
and AI Dwayne The Rock Johnson, and those celebrities might continue the celebrity on into the future. Um, in terms of athletic competition, do they get to the point? Because people watch video games, but there's still a
Hmm.
human controlling the video game. I don't. You could probably today have video games compete against each other. The game itself competing against the game, and people don't watch that. And people still watch. I think people still watch human chess more than they watch AI chess.
Sure. Although I think
Do you identify?
a lot of humans have learned from AI chess, or human Go players have learned from AI Go and become
Right.
better players.
But
I guess the nature of my question,
if you had the best AIs competing with each other in chess or Go, I don't think people would watch that. If you had
yeah,
AIs competing with each other to be the best player of whatever, Grand Theft Auto 6 or whatever the game is, I don't think people would watch that. They want to watch other humans playing those games.
I guess part of it too was the nature of my question was around the role for humans to train AI. Like, is there a role for people to help a robot learn to run faster, jump higher, throw something farther? I'm thinking robot track and field or robot wrestling or, any robot table tennis. I mean, just from a skills perspective,
I think it
is
so
there a role for human
I,
coaches there?
I think the answer is initially yes, just like Tesla is using the best human drivers to model how to drive in this situation or that situation. But I think you're going to get to a point fairly quickly that the bots will outperform humans. The humans won't have much value to add, and the real way that the bots will learn to do things is in simulation. And then in the real world, they will try different things and they will learn to try different ways of doing things, especially in simulation, which is how Google, what was it, AlphaGo won,
Right.
right? It did a whole bunch of simulations itself and figured out new strategies.
Yep.
I think that's a much more likely way they're going to learn in the long run. But in the short run, will they learn to some extent from humans? Sure. Over time, I think they will gradually become better than humans at a lot of physical tasks, and they will learn from simulation, from performing in simulation, and then applying that in the real world and seeing how it works in the real world. And
Hmm.
simulations will get better to the point where they will so effectively simulate the real world that it will become super valuable training. But then you have the edge cases that come in, so you still need to experience edge cases that only the real world can provide.
I mean, there would be certainly a lot of exciting job opportunities if it was the case that humans could serve as coaches, right?
I
People in
think
the kitchen to show the robot how to do very precise things in the kitchen, people in sports, people in science, in different areas, if they could play a role somehow to help coach and train robots, AI-powered robots,
I think
that
it's
would be
more of a
exciting.
I think the role is more telling the bot what to do than telling it how to do it.
Yeah,
I think that the bots will eventually, at some point, the bots will learn how to do everything we know how to do. And then it's a question of, hey, like, what do we want done? And I don't know that the bots will know what we want done. And then you have this question of whether there's some overarching AI that decides what's going to be done. And have you read Ian Banks' The Culture series?
no,
So it's one
not
of
yet.
Elon's favorite series of books. It's called The
Hmm.
Culture. I think the first one is Consider Phlebas, Phlebas, and there's Player of Games, which I think Grimes made an album about Player of Games, or a song. So I would encourage you to read that book because that's
Hmm.
a vision of a world where AIs become dominant and autonomous bots are prevalent, and yet there's actually trillions of humanoids. Not It's not humans, it's some other galaxy or whatever, but it's still effectively anthropomorphized in some way creatures. I think it's a brilliant series of books, and I think that that gives you a pretty interesting, like there's a the precursor to Neuralink called Neural
Hmm.
Lace in that series of books, and um, yeah, I think there's a lot to see there. I think a lot, but that's all, it's really like science fiction becoming a reality, and we don't know which version of science fiction is going to become reality in what way. We're really just speculating.
Right.
I think the big thing I'm excited about is you're going to launch a starship to Mars, and you've got a starship that's capable of carrying 100 humans, but it's the mission before you're going to carry humans, so you put 1,000 bots in there, and the bots don't need the same level of life support. And
Right.
I don't know whether it's 10 to 1 bots to humans, or they don't need food. You just turn them off. You just probably have to keep them warm enough that they don't freeze from the cold of space, and you can deliver a huge payload of bots to Mars and have them trained to set up solar panels.
Absolutely. They could build all kinds of things there. Yep.
I think that the first humanoid to land on Mars will probably be a bot. The first humanoid to step on Mars will probably be a bot, and there will probably be 100 of them in the first, or 1,000 of them in the first mission. And actually, I wanted to, sorry, come back to you for a second. You've been asking me questions. This is a conversation I had with Larry 12 hours ago or so. Um, I think that Tesla will start manufacturing bots at some scale soon. I think that in order to have bot learn more faster, you need to generate more data, and you generate more
Yes,
data by having more bots doing more things. This is why I'm an
that's right.
advocate for a bot beta program. I'm not saying the bot beta program will happen, but please, Elon, please. I think that a bot beta program, you want to expose the bots to more environments, more challenges. You know, everything's a corner case in the real world. Everything's an edge case in the real world at first. Expose bots to everything. I posted a poll maybe a couple hours ago on X. Like, what's the primary training mission for Optimus? Is it training it to do tasks, work tasks, or is it training it to understand the real world? And when I last looked, understanding the real world was the winner by far. Um,
Mhm.
I think the third choice was like make memes, dank memes. I don't think is winning. But I think understanding the real world, and Larry thinks no, they only need a few bots. They need to train to do a few tasks because there's a vision that for bot that it is going to work in Tesla factories and it will eventually work in other factories and work in other warehouses. And I think that's a fairly limited view of the potential for bot. I think, and my conversations with James Douma, I don't know where he stands on this now, but maybe a year or two ago, my conversation with James Douma, it's a general purpose humanoid bot. And the reason that they're making a bot in humanoid form is because the world is built for us because we built it.
Right.
So creating a bot of some other form wouldn't make sense. We're the form that the bot needs to operate in human space. And you want to, so like I had advocated for a roofing bot, and James thought I was wrong. And I tend to think James is smarter than I am on this stuff. He said, no, you want a general purpose bot. I do think you're going to have different forms of bot. And but I think that having multiple bots out there in the real world, training the bots to understand how the real world works and developing real world AI is a far more important mission than training it how to pick up a box and move it over there.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's all part of the same process. It needs to be able to do both. It needs to have all the skills and it needs to be able to operate in the real world.
Okay, so my question for you is, what I can see, I want to hear what you think of this. I see Tesla making, like, they have this new generation of bot that they just developed. And I don't think this is going to be the consumer version or the version they're going to sell to customers. But it might be a good idea to build a pilot line and manufacture 10,000 of those a year, right? Not a million, 10,000.
Hmm.
If it costs them $20,000 a bot to manufacture these bots, that's $200 million. That's chump change for Tesla. If that's going to generate a lot of data and enable them to train better, and at the same time, it generates their knowledge and understanding of manufacturing bots, right? Because it's not just making the ideal bot, it's making the machine that builds the machine. So what do you think about that prospect of blowing $200 million or $1 billion building a series of an early generation of bots that aren't likely to be commercially viable to generate data and to build that experience building bots and learning how to build the machine that builds the machine and the machine. What do you think of that as an expense for the company?
Well, I think it makes sense if there's enough people on the Tesla team to be able to work with all the bots and so on. So part of what we're seeing with these videos teasing us about the bot, it's a recruiting tool, right? They're constantly looking to build a team. And we saw a photo recently, there's about 200 people in that photo. I'm not sure if that's the extent of the team, but that's great. So you need the engineers and the people first. The other thing that's an if is if you build these bots and you collect all this data, are you equipped to do anything with it? Do they have the dojo system capacity capable, is it ready to receive all this real world data from bots? Or is it just going to be received and then dumped because they can't do anything with it? They don't have the capacity for it.
Well, I think Dojo
So,
version one, the current version of Dojo is designed for that. I think there's a next generation of Dojo coming in probably a couple years that will have a broader scope. But and I think I may be reading too much into this, but Steve Jurvetson, you know who Steve Jurvetson is? He's a
mhm.
VC, one of the early investors in Tesla and SpaceX. He's on the board
Yes.
maybe of SpaceX or Tesla. I forget which one he's on. He posted I like I said, I think I may have overinterpreted his post, but it sounded like there is already an exapod running. That there is already 7 cabinets of Dojo supercomputer running now, and then they're
Yeah,
going to make more of them. And you know, I think that may be, and they said they're going to 20x their compute by the end of next year.
right. So you can see the trajectory that they're on,
Yeah,
and they're building all that for a reason.
yeah,
It's both for Robotaxi and for the bots,
yeah.
right? So it's just a question of when that's in place enough so that if they build the bots that you're talking about, then they can actually do something with all the data that actually helps them. So all these building blocks, the team, the computing power, the robots themselves need to be in place at the right point.
And they need bot minders. If they built 10,000 bots, they might need 1,000 bot minders.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's
Although
definitely this,
I vote for the bot beta program, and then we'll pay them 25,000. They'll make a profit on the early bots, and we'll do the bot minding for free.
right. And we would expose the bots to things that they probably can't dream of if enough people have bots
Yeah.
in the real world.
There's walking on a Hawaiian island, there's walking on a mountain, there's walking on a beach, there's walking in on a concrete floor. There's so many walking upstairs, walking up this kind of stairs, walking up that kind of stairs. There's so many different environments that a bot can be exposed to, and you
Yeah.
need to have some very clear rules about these are things you're allowed to do and these are things you aren't allowed to do. Uh,
Right.
and please be careful and all that. And if you're going to have a bot do something that's unusually challenging, be ready to catch it.
Yeah.
And you might
Yeah.
have physical requirements like, all right, bot weighs 125 pounds. You have to be in really good physical shape and you have to weigh, 150 pounds and be able to demonstrate you can lift the bot if you have to. Right. I could
Yeah.
see
And
requirements like that.
I would imagine it would be constrained to certain locations, like inside your house, or if it's a employer inside the workplace in this, certain area that's set up for the bot, those kinds of
Yeah,
constraints. I don't think that
you might geofence the bots initially, but then
yeah,
I do think you'd want to be able to take the bot in your car. Like one of my fantasies before when I was in Florida was I want to take my bot with me country line dancing.
yeah,
I want to teach the bot country line dancing. That would be something.
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm hoping that there's a role for bot coaches and teachers and so on. That would be an interesting line of business for many people.
Yeah. Well,
Great discussion. Thank you.
I want to thank you for doing this. And thank you for the wisdom you're imparting to the Tesla community. Um, where can people find you if they want to see more? I mean, I think you have an X account, and I'll post a link to that. Is there anywhere else you want them to go look for information about you?
No, that's really the best place. Cern Basher on X. I'm here to learn. I'm here to be better, be less wrong, right?
That's right. Be Less Wrong shirt at elonbits.com along with the
Yeah,
Tesla shirt. Yeah.
right. It's great. It's a great community, and I've learned a lot, and I'll contribute it in all the ways that I think I can.
Okay. Thank you so much.